Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to part 2 of how Britain's justice system is a disgrace. This video is about Britain's long-standing prison overcrowding and how this, along with soft-minded judges, means violent criminals get some incredibly light sentences. Yet, those pesky right-wingers who commit crimes against the regime have the full weight of the law thrown against them. Let's get into it. By my count, there are 123 prisons in England and Wales, with a total capacity close to 90,000. By contrast, there are millions of criminal offences committed each year, with hundreds of thousands of violent crimes recorded by police annually. Now, it's a matter of personal opinion as to what crime deserves what punishment, but I think it's safe to say that there is not enough prison capacity for the amount of crime we experience. To an extent, this has always been a bit of a problem. Even centuries ago, there were frequent issues of overcrowding that the government had to step in to resolve. But back then, we came up with an excellent solution to not having enough prison space domestically. We sent the buggers abroad. The penal colonies, as they were called, were an excellent solution to domestic prison capacity. In many cases, criminals would be given the choice of either living in a British prison for a number of years or working under indentured servitude in the colonies. First in the Americas, then predominantly in Australia. Conditions weren't great, granted, but indentured servants were usually paid and would be free men after the end of their term. They were thus given the chance to be productive members of society, living far away from the British public. But all things end eventually, and by the end of 1867, the last convict ship had sailed. But let's take a look at crime statistics in this period. As you can see on the graph, throughout the Victorian period, up to the end of World War I, crime sat at about 100,000 recorded crimes annually. After all, this is the Britain that earned the reputation for being gentlemanly, peaceful and civilised, and an immensely prosperous nation too, especially for its time. Crime then went up at an increasing rate since the war, along with Britain's increasing impoverishment. Do bear in mind that this graph is logarithmic, so this is actually an exponential increase. And whilst the crime rate peaked in the mid-90s, it must be remembered that the rate is per capita, and we have had an exploding population, plus sentences take a while to complete, so there is lag in the system. So how does this compare to prison capacity? Well, this handy graph shows that prison building massively dropped off after the mid-90s, at a time when capacity was already a huge problem. And, as this graph shows, crime rate has since gone back up, almost to the levels of the 90s, but now with a much larger population. It seems that government policy at the time was incredibly optimistic and failed to be proactive with prison building, I suspect as an effort to save money. Nor is it like enough prisons are being now either, despite the obviousness of the problem. Essentially, the government is neither proactive nor even reactive, they're just inactive. As of very recently, the prisons were reported to be at 98% capacity, with only 1,500 spaces left. All this despite measures to reduce occupancy. It is perhaps no wonder that the prisons are so full, especially now as Britain is becoming increasingly poor and increasingly filled with members of the so-called religion of peace, almost all of whom have arrived here in only the last few decades. I mean, you can consider this entire cohort to be a new problem that we have not anticipated and did not have to face before. The prison system in Britain is, like so many things, outdated and in short supply, and terribly overcrowded. There is, of course, another problem with the justice system, and that is the actual judges. You see, the actual procedure of court is incredibly fair, arguably still the envy of the world. There are no kangaroo courts or show trials in Britain. Every man still gets a fair trial. But where the problem lies is with the judges. Time after time after time, these judges have been incredibly soft in their sentencing. Far too often we have seen judges dole out incredibly light sentences for the most egregious of crimes. Be that transgender women, aka biological men, being caught with indecent images of children, being found guilty but ultimately spared jail by the sole decision of the judge. Or an immigrant man who violated an underage girl and believed women are no more worthy than a lollipop that has been dropped on the ground, those are his words, also being spared jail because he claims he didn't know that sex with a 13-year-old girl is illegal. Many similar cases exist. I doubt these judges are all hardcore socialist ideologues. Most are probably just soft-headed fools. These judges probably believe more in rehabilitation and, being kind. What a lovely thought, being kind. Doesn't matter that you came here, often illegally, to violate young girls. We will be kind and understanding. You poor, poor immigrant. You simply don't understand our culture. That's all. Let's be kind. So that brings us back to the main problem, sentencing. We have overcrowded prisons, often at or exceeding safe capacity, and soft-minded judges who think violent sex offenders should be shown peace-loving kindness. There are perhaps 3 ways overcrowding can be dealt with. The options are 1. Build enough prisons, 2. Reduce prison sentences, or 3. Don't even bother sending criminals to prison in the first place. Or if you're Keir Starmer, you can let them all out early. Which do you think has been done in the past few decades? Well, if you've been paying any attention, then you know it's options 2 and 3. What prison building there has been minimal, far less than what would be necessary to keep up with crime. It didn't need to be this way either. There is plenty of space in Britain, and we still have plenty of uninhabited islands. Maybe we need a new penal colony after all. But no, instead of sending violent criminals to prison, the judges often prefer to sentence people to community service, house arrest, or even just re-education courses. Naturally, putting violent criminals back on the streets has done little to improve the actual crime rate. But there is also one segment of society that is not let off lightly. Can you guess who? Yep, it's the dreaded right wing. These terrible fascists, by which I mean regular people with moderate views who simply take things too far, usually have the full weight of the law thrown against them. Repeatedly violating a 12-year-old girl, 180 hours of community service. Selling anti-immigration stickers, 2 years imprisonment. Waving an England flag near a mosque, jail. Waving the flags of Islamic terror groups, nothing at all. The two-tiered nature of criminal sentencing is blatant and extreme. The woke judges, and their useful idiot colleagues, are so cucked out to the whole woke mindset that they view any left-winger or minority as a victim, and any right-wing Englishman as an oppressor. They also genuinely believe that many of these minority groups are simply too stupid to have understood the law, and, with their white saviour complex, they believe that they can be the one to show compassion and show these criminals the rightful way. Those on the right get no such compassion. I mean, they're English, so they should know better, right? At least as far as the judges are concerned. So, yes, the greatest problem with justice in this country is that when a man complains online that a second-generation immigrant has stabbed 3 young girls, his sentence is far longer than the immigrant who violates similar such girls. It's a fucking disgrace. Anyway, that's all. As an announcement that I forgot to make last time, I have now set up a Buy Me a Coffee page, so if you want to support me there, that would be very much appreciated. Genuinely. I don't know what's happened to this channel's viewership numbers, but I'm getting a lot fewer impressions and views than I used to, despite metrics seeming to be perfectly healthy. So I don't know how much it truly helps, but if you could like, subscribe and share this video, that would hopefully go a long way. With that said, I thank you for watching, and God save the King.